Hi everyone, welcome to this Meta Product Manager mock interview. In this video, we are doing Meta behavioral questions. And with us, we have a former Facebook product manager as the candidate. I'm very pleased to say Damien is with us. Damien, how are you doing?
I'm doing really great, Tom. Excited to be here. My name is Damian Peters, a former Facebook Meta, I should say, product manager. And while I was at Meta, I worked on location and places and then advertising measurement for several years, 3.5 years.
Cool. Well, in this video, we're going to cover the kind of top 5 most common behavioral questions or leadership and drive questions that are asked at Meta and Facebook. So if you're ready, let's get into the first one. It's a simple one, but it's very, very common. You definitely need to prepare for it if you're doing an interview. It is, tell me about yourself.
Yeah, so I've been a product manager now for going on just about a decade. My background originally started as an engineer. I studied computer science and economics, and this got me a very logical, analytical framework and mindset, but also gave me a lot of technical skills in terms of learning to build software and building software for several years. I initially started out working with government clients and government consulting, the most innovative space in the world, as you can imagine. After a couple of years of that, I decided I wanted to change. I went to MIT for my MBA and wanted to study business. And I was looking for a way to stay technical, stay within technology, and keep those skills, but utilize my newfound knowledge and interest in business and understanding. It was in grad school where I discovered product management. I interned at Zynga back in the heyday, worked on mobile poker and helped launch the Android product there. And that's where I really love the combination of the strategy and product design and thinking and focus on the user, but was able to really rely and utilize my technical background to both relate with engineering, talk to engineering, and understand the actual effort and impact of the changes that we were going to be making on the product. In terms of this led me, while I was in grad school, I actually looked at several different industries and really was drawn to product management. The truth is, as an engineer, I always was more interested in the client and how they would use the product and what the impact of the product would be on their life. So much more interested about how the government was going to use my software as opposed to the best way to implement this. And that's why product management really has been a great match for me over the last couple of years. It takes that strategic thinking, the organizational theory, working with people, working across teams, merges that with the technical background so I can still understand, should we build something across all platforms? Should we build something on mobile first as opposed to web? Understanding the cost for the changes that we're going to make and bring it all together to really deliver high quality products to the user.
Excellent, thanks. That's a really good answer. Thank you, Damien. Of course, there are many ways to answer this question, but one good approach is to talk about why you want to be a product manager. If you have relevant skills such as engineering, data analytics, etc., bring them up here and try to show evidence of progression. Convey that you're on an upward journey. Also, do some background research on the interviewer. Try and connect with them on a personal level. For Meta, try and demonstrate values such as entrepreneurship and scrappiness. Meta really love these. They also love people that come from high-end startups. So highlight that experience if you have it. But make sure to always be humble. Humility and a team player attitude is really important in most companies, but at Meta especially. Okay, let's crack on with number 2. Damien, why Meta?
Yeah, it's a great question. So Meta, as many people know, is generally a very innovative company at the forefront of technology, doing a lot of really interesting things with really great and smart people. But this does apply to a lot of companies in the Bay Area within technology. So more specifically, one is I did some research talking to friends and acquaintances that are actually product managers at Facebook. They've had really great reviews of both the work culture, the ability to have impact, the transparency at the company, and that the fact that they feel empowered to really lead and drive strategy for their team. That's really appealing to me. But really, when it comes down to it, the big thing for me is that I really do connect with the mission of Meta. My family, I'm a first generation American. My family's from the Caribbean. And so the ability to stay in contact and relate and keep in communication with others, especially when far away, has been really important in my life. As a child, even now, my family relies heavily on WhatsApp and tools like WhatsApp. They use tools like Facebook feed to stay in touch with members back in the islands. My mom owns a Facebook portal. And I like that Facebook has a very much commitment to building community and those connections. And it's not just simply kind of like telecommunications or, posting things like that. So I really connect with this mission of bringing the world closer together and creating more connections. Similarly, I lived abroad for a while. In Spain for a couple of years, and tools like Facebook and Instagram, along with WhatsApp, were really key and important to helping me still feel connected with both friends, family, colleagues from afar, along with helping me to find new friends and colleagues in my new city. So at the end of the day, Facebook is a great company, doing a lot of great innovative things, working on the forefront of innovation and technology. The personal references that I've got have come from employees that seem to really enjoy their job and really enjoy what they do. And then lastly, the mission of Facebook is something that connects with me personally. I feel I'm very interested, and I feel that the type of technology and work that Facebook does do, and Meta, including things with the metaverse, and again, building more communities and helping people remotely and even non-remotely be able to connect together, is really important. And that's why I'd love to join Meta as a product manager.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, great answer. Facebook product managers used to call this the Google test. If your answer applies to any big tech company, it's not a good answer. So you need to demonstrate you've done research. Go and talk to people who have insight on the company. Also, show that Meta's mission around connecting people resonates with you. If possible, bring in a personal story, as Damien did, by talking about his parents in the Caribbean. A personal anecdote also makes the interviewer more likely to connect and remember your answer. Okay, Damien, let's move on to question number 3. Tell me about a time you solved a team conflict.
Yes. This is always a good one. Fundamentally, as a product manager, there have been many team conflicts or inter-team conflicts that I've needed to work on or be able to address. One particular situation that comes to mind was when I was working with a team we were working on location products, and we had a designer and a team of engineers. In particular, one meeting, we were doing an engineering review of the designs and what we were going to be working on in the next sprint. And one of the engineers said, it would be very hard to implement the rounded corners that the designer had put into their designs. The designer did not take kindly to this at all. He had actually felt fed up. He slammed his laptop on the table and then said, I designed things for a reason, and it should be designed as this, and walk out. So clearly the problem here is that there's a short-term and long-term problem as I saw it. Short-term, we need to get through the sprint. We need to come to a resolution, and whether the designer or the engineer or some compromise needed to be met. And then long-term, I've seen this in the past on other teams, but I was concerned about the ability for design and engineering to work directly together, because if I have to come in and help resolve or mitigate every single conflict, this will really hurt the engineering velocity. I also, understand both parties, right? Design does really spend a lot of time to implement and think about how things should be laid out. But engineering does have a really great understanding of how long something will take to implement. And oftentimes they may see a hurt in their productivity or velocity because of changes that may not have a strong impact on the UX, but would take a long time to implement. And secondly, it may show that there's simply a disconnect between understanding why a decision was made on the design front and why it's important for engineering to adhere to that and solve it. So thinking through the solution, I wanted to understand both sides a little bit better and come to a compromise to solve the short-term and long-term. I met with each one individually and got a better understanding, along with helping them understand the other person's side of view. So helping design understand a little bit more about the cost from engineering, and then engineering understand the painstaking amount of effort that design does really go through this to solve this problem. I was able to bring the team back together, and on short term, we came up with a compromise. So once we had a better understanding of actually how much this change would cost the engineering team and the other areas it would hurt us, in addition to the actual impact that these rounded corners versus square corners would have, we were able to come to a compromise of it was kind of like a pseudo rounded corner, for lack of a better word, but it took about half as much time to implement. But long term, what we had set basis and cadence here is that creating a more consistent channel for engineering to both give their feedback to design and also to have design for certain changes, understand where some of their changes may be causing a lot of engineering effort, and be able to add either additional justifications or offer some alternatives potentially for the team. The impact of this was, one, we were able to finish the sprint on time. Alternatively, these two warring bodies would have caused potential issues for the entire team. But long term, what it meant is that for when we were going through our engineering reviews, design and engineering were working more consistently together. Engineering felt more bought in, and design also had a little bit more empathy for some of their design choices and how that would come about. And the lessons from this was, one is in terms of the PM, product manager is oftentimes the glue or the interpreter between different parts of the team. But if you are if you're always the interpreter, you'll create a bottleneck around yourself, because everything now has to pass through you. So it's important to really invest in helping the team work with a shared lexicon, with a shared framework, a shared way of how we operate and communicate impact and effort, and that there's a good way for them to work together.
Okay, thanks, Damien. I wanted to ask, is there anything you do now when you join a new team as a PM to avoid these type of conflicts?
Yeah, so one of the takeaways from this is had we had some of this shared lexicon and understanding to start with, that maybe it wouldn't have happened in the first place. So now when I go on to teams, I really, if it's an existing team, I really want to understand how they're communicating already and if there are gaps between certain functions or certain teams. I start with, oftentimes there's helping either giving engineering more context about design or some of the user decisions that are being made so that they understand why certain choices are being made. And then also having design work more closely with engineering to both help them understand a little bit more of the process and kind of why certain decisions are being made and kind of the impact of that. So I now try and start and get the team in a better place where these types of communications can happen naturally and that level of understanding. So it doesn't explode into kind of a large confrontation. It can be resolved in terms of usually a few additional questions or some additional explanation, because everyone understands that they may be looking at the exact same thing very, very differently. But when we have a shared way of discussing this and talking about this, it can help go through these much quicker and much faster.
Cool, great answer, thanks. With tell me about a time questions, we always recommend to structure your answer using the SIPSIL framework: situation, problem, solution, impact, and lessons. Damien employed this to good effect here. He also inserted some strong storytelling moments, for example when he describes his colleagues slamming their laptop down. This sort of thing can help make your story more memorable for the interviewer. Questions about conflict are common at most companies, and here the final part of the SIPSIL framework is probably the most important. You'll want to show that you've learned very applicable lessons from the specific example you give, and that those lessons will help you when dealing with conflict in the future. Okay, question number 3. Tell me about a time you failed at work.
Failure. One thing I think that's very important as a product manager is to have a healthy relationship with failure, and to not be, because it's going to happen. But if you let it crush you, then you can't be effective at your job. And also fostering an environment of the correct failures and being able to learn and move on from them. A failure that I very vividly remember, and this was a bit earlier in my career, I was working on a mobile game. And this mobile game was where you would breed creatures and you would put them into a habitat. It was free to play. We'd monetize by selling costumes and gold coins and things along those lines. One day, and I believe it was like a Tuesday or so, we came in and we realized that ARPU, the average revenue per user, had dropped about 20%. This was shocking. This was weird. This doesn't typically happen unless we made a change internally to the system. So, the problem here is fundamentally our users are now worth 25% less, and this is a huge issue, right? We weren't going to meet our goals and run to that. So in terms of the solution, the fundamental solution was to create a war team on this. So we said, all right, let's first take a very tactical approach. Let's look at the data, let's look at the information that we have and see if we can find and understand the root cause. We looked at user engagement. It didn't change significantly. We looked if we had just dropped a bunch of users. That didn't change. We looked at competing games to see if there was another similar game that was stealing our users. We looked at our payment processing flows. And the thing is, nothing was showing any clear drop or any clear root cause. Simultaneously, after maybe the first day of not clearly being able to find the root cause, usually the root cause kind of bubbles up. We then started with a series of tests that we could do let's test some things. Let's try increasing prices for some cohort, or let's remove the lower cost item for a cohort and see if that changes. Maybe there's something, we had specific quests, and some of these quests had payment gates tied to them and related. But the truth is, in that war team, and we spent almost 80% of our time for approximately 3 weeks focused on this because it was such a huge issue. The truth is, we failed to actually find the root cause of this problem. We could not see any direct change internally, anything externally that kind of caused the drop in ARPU. It's influenced by so many feeder metrics and functions in terms of what could change it, but we couldn't see any one thing that would cause such a drastic change in such a drastic time. But in terms of actually finding a solution, because we actively looked for fixes and ways to bring this up in a short time without hurting our overall metrics, we were able to recover everything except a 3% drop. So the changes that we were able to make, the A/B test, while looking to solve the root cause, but also looking to solve the problem, we were able to enact several changes that were able to bring us back to close our baseline within a reasonable amount of time. So we failed to solve the problem. We failed to understand what exactly happened. We failed to understand the root cause here. And it did weigh on the team. We had a pretty great track record of solving these problems and figuring them out. But we were happy that we were able to make some changes, that we didn't just focus on the problem, on understanding the problem, but we also focused on taking best guesses at the solution and moving forward with rapid A/B testing and trying out some new things to solve different problems to finally get there. So kind of one of the big takeaways here was it was one of the first times we really had to soak up that that a problem happened and we couldn't neatly, quickly answer it with data. So that was a very humbling experience that we took away from the team. But one of the bigger lessons is when there is a change, that as we're looking for the solution, we should, with the available resources, with the information that we have available, also try and simultaneously solve it in what may seem like in orthodox or tangential ways, because you may solve the core problem and you may find the root cause and just be able to solve that and answer it. But there may be a fundamental shift that means that you need to change your tactics. And by quickly looking and working on a solution in addition to trying to solve for the problem, you may find that the learnings you get from the new tactics are as important or more influential than just solving the root cause in the first place.
Okay, thanks, Damien. Great answer. For this question, you need to understand the role failure plays in your job. You can't never fail, so you want to be able to speak to how you deal with it and how you bring this to the team. Cater your story to the organization. Meta embraces failure publicly and openly, even celebrating it. Other companies may have a different view, and you want to try and match their ideals. Use a real failure with real impact. Don't be too fluffy and say, we worked too hard for a weekend, or something that isn't a real failure. Instead, use something more serious and take responsibility for your part. However, avoid making it appear to be an overtly bad misjudgment or poor decision from you. Finally, you really need to show how you learned and grew from the failure. Show the impact of your efforts and how you helped mitigate or reduce the failure. Okay, let's ask number 5 of these meta behavioral or leadership and drive questions. Question number 5 is, tell me about a product you led from idea to launch.
Yeah. So leading a product or product feature or some aspect of change from idea to launch comes up all the time, day to day, week to week, month to month. But one story that really stands out actually was a somewhat, I'd say, non-traditional product for me, and actually was while I was still in grad school. So while I was at MIT, I was one of the co-presidents of the technology club there. And the product that, the idea that I actually had was around a technology conference for the business school. Interestingly, some context at the time. So at MIT, we prided ourselves on being very tech focused within the business school and within the business program. Harvard, up the street, great school. They actually had a yearly tech conference, which brought in both great speakers, gave the students great access to different companies, and helped bring the status of the program within the tech world. But funny enough, MIT did not have a technology conference within the business school where we would talk about tech or bring in people or speakers to talk about tech. So my idea was actually that as a product, as an ongoing product, that we should have a regular ongoing conference that would kind of come at the school. So starting with this problem of there's just kind of like there's a need here that is hurting us by not having this launch, by not having a tech conference. We saw it in many schools and we saw the benefit that it would have. I started with some research. So I looked at other schools, I looked at other conferences, I looked at how they were structured. I tried to get an idea of what would make sense for us as a school, whether we were uniquely positioned in certain aspects compared to other places. And I really thought about the end consumer being the actual constituents within the larger MBA program, but also specifically within the tech club at the program. So with that, kind of came to the conclusion that we should have a yearly conference. We should invite companies. We had a sports and analytics conference at the time, so we wanted to focus on mobile technology, software firms, and leadership, especially around the different functions that a business person would do at a tech company outside of product management. So sales, marketing, leadership, things like that. And we wanted to really bring in speakers and companies that would give better access and better job opportunities to the students. So after ideating and kind of coming up with this proposal, it actually was one of the challenges is that dealing with it's much easier with a team of engineers that are all aligned with you, dealing with a lot of similar students, creating that interest and creating the excitement and convincing others was a large part of the problem. Why should we do this? Why should we do this extra effort? Many of us are about to graduate and maybe we already have classes. Why should we necessarily invest in something that may or may not directly impact me? And kind of may have some long-term benefits. So creating a compelling case, looking at other schools, showing, instilling a sense of pride in our school and program to kind of get people together, working through the financials of actually what it would take to actually build something like this, what money we'd need to raise, what money we'd have access to the school, mapping out all of the resources that we did have, from whether it was on-campus resources, connections that we had within the company, alumni that we could tap into, and then putting together what it would tactically look like, both from a marketing standpoint, whether it's a marketing plan, how are we going to get people to come to this, how are we going to be able to sell tickets, finding a venue that we'd be able to put together, and then even after the event. So again, focusing on the consumer being the actual attendee who's looking for a job or some opportunity to learn or advance their career. How can we package the recordings in a way for them to use? How can we give access to the speakers in terms of a conference, in terms of a mixer or something along those lines? Or how can we collect information about students who are interested in these companies and present them to these companies afterwards? So it was a lot of work, a lot of effort, shockingly a lot of work and a lot of effort. I definitely thought it would be a lot easier. But at the end of the day, it was one of the, it's an enduring staple at the school. Actually, an alumni several years later bumped into me at a meeting, at a meetup. It was actually a blockchain meetup, and was like, "Oh, Damien, I heard that you had started the conference, and we're in like our 5th year now." So it was a really interesting product, some very different challenges, but at the end of the day, it was thinking about who the end consumer was, thinking about their unique needs and what they wanted, and looking at all of the resources that were available, instilling and inspiring others to really be on board and understand why this was a good idea, and then tactically running through the execution to make sure that that it would work well. And I think the impact from that was very clear. Even as an alum, it helps my status and the value of my degree, because I'll have people who have gone or heard of the conference and think more highly of the program as a result.
Great answer, Damien. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. For this question, try to use a story that's memorable and can stand out. Don't be afraid to use a non-traditional answer, especially if you're light on experiences. Damien's university example worked well here. Make sure that you use an idea that came from you, or at least was heavily influenced by you as a self-starter, or someone who takes initiative. If the idea came from elsewhere and you just implemented it, you'll lose marks for not actually driving the idea or leaving doubt about how much you actually did. When telling your story, show how you used key PM skills. Use research, working with a team, motivating the team, determining success, analytics, presentation, etc. Call these out as they happen and help the interviewer connect the dots. Finally, scrappiness is a key meta attribute. Show how you had to get missing resources or faced some obstacles to get the results. Thank you. That's the last of the top five meta behavioral questions and leadership and drive questions. So yeah, thanks. I hope you've enjoyed doing this with us today.
I had a great time. I hope this is useful to you when it comes to leadership and drive and Meta's Facebook interview. It is something you can prepare for. It is something that you can definitely do and crush. And working with coaches and using the resources out there will help ensure that you're an easy, as we say, a high confidence hire.
Hello, I really hope you found that useful. If you did, you can like and subscribe, and why not come visit us at IGotAnOffer.com. There you can find more videos, useful frameworks and question guides, all completely free. And you can also book expert feedback one-to-one with our coaches from Google, Meta, Amazon, etc. Thank you and good luck with your interview.